Welcome to Squat Talks. Tonight we're going to be talking about the aged squatter. And as we're talking about the aged squatter, we're also going to be watching an aged squatter squat. And tonight in this workout I'm working up to a single with 365 and then I do a set of 9 with 315. So the set of 9 with 315 is part of that 2022 squat challenge. We have about 5 weeks left in 2022, so if you're interested, please join us in that 2022 squat challenge, which is squatting 315 for as many reps as you can in a single set. And then after I do that, I work with the safety squat bar and do some wide stance squatting, just as kind of a mobility work and preventative maintenance. So that's my workout that we're going to be watching as we talk about the aged squatter. If you are an aged squatter, like me, someone who's in their 4th decade of squatting, believe it or not, this is my 4th decade of squatting. I've been squatting pretty regularly since I was a teenager. If you're in your 4th decade or more of squatting, you're going to find that some things probably have to change in your training. And so I'm going to hopefully give you some wisdom from my years of squatting that hopefully you can apply to your own training if you're getting up there in age, or even if you're younger, you might kind of consider some of these things as you program your squatting training. The first bit of advice I would tell you as you are programming as an aged squatter is that you need to make sure that you're getting proper warm-up and you're programming mobility work into your training somehow. I find that as I've gotten older, the number of sets and the amount of time it takes for me to be properly warmed up for heavy work has increased a great deal. When I was younger, more mobile, didn't really have any nagging issues, I didn't really need a whole lot of warm-up. I could probably go in, squat a few times at the bar, maybe do a set with each successive pretty large jump of weight until I reached my heavy working weight. Now it's going to require a number of sets, even just with the empty bar, until I start to feel kind of smooth. And then I'll work with 135, then 225, and then go from there depending on what I'm working up to. But it does require a number of sets. Probably, for me, it's probably seven or more sets if I'm working up to something heavy. If I'm not working up to something heavy, it might not require that much. If I'm doing higher rep stuff, if the intensity is low, I might not really need all that warm-up necessarily, but for heavy squatting, I'm going to require a longer warm-up. That warm-up is what I would consider to be kind of mobility work. You're feeling the movement, you're making sure that your hips are mobile, making sure your ankles, making sure that your lower back is locked in, etc. Those are all part of the warm-up, is refining technique and making sure that you're more mobile enough to do the heavy work well. Mobility work, as far as stretching goes, or specific mobility work, that's something I'll typically do outside of the workout. Although I consider things like Bulgarian split squats, Cossack squats, some types of good mornings, RDLs, etc., to be kind of like mobility work. Yeah, it builds strength, but it's also kind of a mobility builder. So in your programming, it is crucial that you are warming up adequately and that you are getting enough mobility work. That's kind of a more gym specific thing, is to make sure that you're getting enough warm-up and make sure that you're getting that mobility work in. The second one is something that has to do with programming, but it also has to do with kind of lifestyle and lifestyle choices, and that's injury avoidance. When you're young, you can have small injuries here and there, and it's not a big deal. As you get older, those smaller injuries will hurt you significantly, and they'll put a real damper in your gains or even your ability to maintain. So For example, in May I had an adductor issue that I had from doing Bulgarian split squats with not with body weight. I loaded that and ended up hurting an adductor. It basically shut me down for most of June, and then I got COVID, which hurt me in July. So basically my whole summer was a wash because of those. COVID was not insignificant, but the adductor issue was not a big one. But it ended up putting such a cramp in things that those small things can really hurt you big. So when you're young, I feel like you can train through a lot of that stuff, but when you're older, it's not so easy to do. You also need to be careful about technique. That's crucial when you're young or when you're old, but as you get older, you want to make sure that your technique is spot on. The third thing is issue maintenance. So if you have chronic issues like lower back that seems to give you a problem, or shoulder mobility, shoulder restrictions, if you have things like that, that issue can be a real pain in your training. So you need to make sure you're doing something to maintain proper mobility and making sure that those issues don't become worse over time. Recovery is a big one. When you're young, man, I can look back on some of my logs when I was a teenager or when I was in my early 20s and how you'd go into the gym after a night of partying and you'd be fine. Those things as you get older are difficult, and as you get older, finding good sleep is more and more difficult as well. So recovery is something that you need to consider. You need to be smart about your training. Maybe that marathon session, that I don't know, the Litvinov workout that you did when you were young isn't something that you can probably do anymore. Smolov, I don't know if I'll ever do Smolov again. Chances are pretty good I'll never do anything like that again, because recovery is huge. I feel like you can get away with a lot of that when you're young, but as you get older, recovery is an issue. And then the last thing I would say is that diet is something that outside of the gym, diet is something that you want to be more careful of as you get older. When I was younger, I could get away with eating a bunch of crap and it wouldn't be a big deal. But now, if I, for example, decide to binge on Halloween candy, it's a problem. It affects your energy levels significantly. You feel the difference. If I am not careful about caffeine intake, I'm a caffeine addict, but if I get too much or not enough, it's going to end up hitting me pretty hard. And I'm going to feel those effects in the gym very readily. So diet is a big one. I don't know what it is, but when you get older, the bad diet, it hits you hard. And I don't know if that's an activity level thing, age thing, hormones, enzymes. It's probably all of those things. But as you get older, diet can really affect you in a big bad way. So for the aged squatter, here are the 5 things I'm telling you to be careful of. You need to be careful of that warm-up and mobility work. You need to be careful about avoiding injury. You need to be careful about your issues. You need to be careful about your recovery. And you need to be careful about your diet. Those things need to be planned as you get older. When you're younger, you can get away with just kind of freeboating it around, but as you get older, you really need to be careful about those things. Those things need to be purposeful. Recovery isn't something that you can just kind of get when you need it. You need to make sure that you plan it into your training. Diet, same thing. Maintenance of any issues that you have, avoiding those injuries, and then making sure that you're programming your warm-up and your mobility work. Okay, here we are right now. I'm in my set of 9, so it looks pretty good to me. I think in retrospect I should have done 10, but as I was in the moment, I could feel the lower back starting to tighten up a little bit, so I called it at 9 reps. Could I have done 10? Yeah, I think I could have done 10. but the lower back was starting to feel it, and I wanted to save myself for another attempt in the future. Injury avoidance, like I said, that was number 2. So after finishing that, then I'm doing these safety squat bar wide stance, and that's mobility work for me. So as I said, these are things that you need to be purposeful about, and I'm trying to practice what I preach. Alright, I hope you found that helpful, and I'll leave you to watch the rest of these if you're interested. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you are also an aged squatter, I'd like to hear what tidbits of knowledge you could give us, and I'll see you on the next Squat Talks.